Hi guys, and welcome to this video for beginners where we are going to paint whales. So I'm just doing a quick drawing here, and you can find so many references online, so you can just go there and look up whales, and there'll be plenty of pictures. Just make sure there is no copyright issues and not, selling images that you copied. Okay, but this is a educational purpose, and will do fine. Just don't sell this picture because this image in particular is copyright protected, or at least I'm not sure it's not copyright protected. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, I'm just drawing whales, 3 whales, different whales in different poses. And if you want to do this and you're not comfortable doing it freehand like this, just print out an image and tape it to your window and just put the watercolor paper on top of the paper and or the picture, and you can see through it and use it as a light box, which is pretty neat. It's a very, very cheap version of a light box, so you should try that. That's awesome if you want to have your image transferred. I should probably have done it because these are not exact in any way, but I think they're looking okay. So I'm just using my eraser to remove the excess graphite so that it's not shining through the watercolors, and we are good to go. I'm just okay, I was planning to go in with clean water. Apparently there was paint in my brush here, but I'm just wetting the top of this whale. Now the water is tinted so you can see it, so that's lucky, I guess. Just wetting it and making sure it's pretty wet. You don't want to wet one area and then let the other dry. You just want to wet the whole thing, let it actually be wet. It's okay if there's puddles. It seems to me like the problem for most beginners is that there's it's intimidating to use enough water. So you really have to make sure you have plenty of water on this shape, this top of the whale's shape. Just water. And then in a second we can go in and put some paint down. This is Paynes Grey. Just adding it in places where I feel like I want to have a nice dark blue tone. You can see how it just spreads in the water because there's so much water. It'll just spread super beautiful and nicely. And I'm just adding some Moonglow as well. Daniel Smith granulating color. You can use a purple or any other color you find would work with this. I'm trying to use purple and blue and a little bit yellow in this one, just to give it a dramatic effect with that yellow, to use complementary colors. I think it's such a cool effect, and it can kind of show the light coming from above. We'll see how it goes, but you can see I added some yellow. Now I'm just wetting the belly here and being careful not to touch the top of the whale just yet. And now it was touching, and there and there. You can see I'm just kissing the painted area a few places so the paint can just run in and create a beautiful color. So I'm not going to put any more color in there. The top part will do the rest. And now I'm just adding a little more color to the whale, just to darken it a little bit. there's a lot of water, so it'll dry up a lot lighter. So I want to make sure that there's still color remaining when it's dry. So I'm just dipping in some color and just letting it flow freely. And now I just took a look at my next reference photo, which is this dolphin. I'm just wetting the top part of the dolphin as well, and you can see I still have some paint on my brush here, and you guys just use a clean water brush and make sure you rinse it, not like the bad example the teacher is right now. But the tinted water will make sure that you can actually see it. So I just wet the area on top of the whale again, and just dropping in color here. And I'm going to do this one a little bit darker, so the colors I use is not as watered down as before, because the dolphin has darker colors. Actually, it's because while I was painting this, I accidentally mistook it as a killer whale, and as you know, they are very black and white. So I was actually going for that very distinct look of the killer whale when I was painting this very innocent dolphin. But it's okay. You can see the fins and the tail. I was just painting those wet on dry to keep the sharp edges, and just wetting the belly here and letting it kiss in a few places, and the paint can run in and do its thing. And now I'm going to add a little bit of salt to the top whale here, and this is just regular table salt. And see, I'm just taking a few grains here. Don't overdo it. If you don't, you're not familiar with this technique, this salt will push away the paint and create a beautiful texture. So we'll see what it does with these whales. But you have to make sure that the paint is it's not dry, then it'll do nothing, and it's not completely wet, then it'll do nothing at all again. So a nice place between wet and dry. If you look at the painting from a side, the area should be shiny but not with puddles. So try to see if you can get that timing right. Otherwise, try it a couple of times and see how it works for you. It'll also depend on the paper and the temperature in the room and how much water you have. Of course, there's many factors. I'm just beginning the lower whale and just adding a little more paint up here, because I think it dries up pretty light. I'm not sure I like that. So we are going to add more color in the next level, or next layer. Here I'm just dropping in some paint again, and this is the Moonglow, and now a little bit of Paynes Grey. And you don't have to be intimidated by the colors I use. Use whatever you have, that you think could be cool for this painting. As I've said in many videos, you don't have to copy the reference photo. That would be boring. So playing around with color and texture and shape is the most fun, and you'll never end up with something that looks like the reference photo. We just want to have fun and see what we can come up with. And I'm just going to add a little bit of salt to this one as well, only in the places where I know it's dry enough. Yeah, I think that is good. Now we can let it dry and come back to it later. So now you can see it dried up very nice, and we can remove the salt. Make sure it's completely dry, otherwise you'll just smudge the paint at this stage. So really make sure it's dry. You can use a hairdryer if you like. Just make sure you're not using the wind to kind of blow away the salt. It gets better result if it dries up naturally. But you can totally use it dry as well. Experiment a little with it. You can see how nice a texture it created, especially on that top one. That is just beautiful. You may get another result if you've applied the salt when it was wetter or drier, but you can experiment and see what you come up with. Now I'm going in and just using a darker tone color here to create some shadow on top of this whale. So just painting this line, and now I cleaned my brush and dabbed it so it's thirsty but not completely wet, and just softening the edge there. So now it's a hard edge on the top, and it's a very soft edge on the lower part of the shadow. Just painting that fin as well, the tail. And now I'm just going to do the same here on some of on the bottom here and on the belly, just to get that roundness of the whale. You can see I'm just softening the edge here with a damp brush. Make sure it's clean. It's a clean brush, clean water, and then just dab it, almost drying it on the paper so it's not wet. Otherwise it'll just make it so much harder for you. So I'm just putting in a little bit of shadow here and there where I feel like the image needs it. There. And again, just putting down a stroke of paint and then softening the edge. And this is a great exercise. If you are going to paint a lot of watercolor, this is a technique that you really want to master, softening the edge of a stroke. I use it in every painting I paint. It's almost as important as wet and wet or wet and dry. It's super important to have that transition between the paint and the water. Just this fin is just painted wet on dry, and that one as well. Then we get this tone in the tail as well. So no softening there, just painting it with the tip of my brush, so the edges are sharp. But here on the back be fairly soft. You can see how much that looks like a killer whale now. It's not a dolphin at all. I think the fin might give it away, but it seriously not a dolphin. It's a combination, I guess, of a killer whale and a dolphin. You can see I've left out the eyes. I'm going to work on those, but for the moment we're just working on the bodies of the whales here. I'm doing the same thing with this one. When you're doing this, make sure you're not ruining the beautiful texture that you created with the salt. That would be so sad if we lost that, because that's beautiful. So try to not cover that. Yeah, I just made a little mistake, but I removed it by just dabbing the spot of paint with my thirsty brush, so it kind of soaked up the paint. I'm just wetting the edge there. And here I'm painting around the fin. And doing a little bit on the tail as well. There you go. I'm just gonna check if it's dry. Always just use your finger and tap it lightly to see if it's still cold. Of course, if it's still wet, it's wet. But if it's feeling dry but still cold, then it's still too wet. So make sure it's not cold. Now I'm going to go in with a finer brush here. This is a size, let's see, it's size 6 or 4. I think it's a 4. To create that detail in the eye. And the eyes are round with a highlight. And I'm gonna do a highlight on the left side, top left side, and just doing a round eye. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but just try to imagine a circle and just a highlight on the top left side. And I'm just going in to do that with all 3 of them. And it's so funny because I'm not looking at the reference at the moment, which is a little stupid because I totally misplaced the eye on the bottom whale, but that's okay. I'm doing the bards here on the whale, just fine strokes, not too hard. It's a great brush control exercise. And the beautiful thing about teaching online is that you can't see what I'm doing, but at the moment I have one cat on my lap and another one just walking around the computer, being a little annoyed that there's no room on my lap. So she's playing around with everything. So if there's a noise, that's why. Now I'm gonna go in with a fineliner. And I really like to add fineliners to some of my paintings because they just create this beautiful contrast between the soft watercolor look and this hard black line. So I'm not gonna outline the whole whale. I'm just drawing in places and just make sure that you are using the fineliner in a way that doesn't overpower the whale. I'm using a very thin fineliner. It's a 0.05. Nope, sorry, it's a 0.1 fineliner. But it's still a very, very fine fineliner. It's very thin, so it doesn't overpower anything. But I am going to draw around the important aspects here. I'm not going to touch the eye. I think that works fine in itself. But just doing a little bit of detail here. Not too much. I really like how this contrasts. It's so beautiful. And now we have this beautiful texture on the body because of the salt. And that uncontrolled texture really complements well with the fineliner. You can see how sharp it's suddenly looking because we have that black outline. It's a way to really sharpen the focus of the whale. And especially with this middle one, we have some white areas that's not defined at all because it's very, very light. So the fine line can go in and actually give it the shape we want. There you go. That's really, really helping us here. It could totally work without it, and we could still depict it as a whale, but the fine liner kind of helps the viewer to see how the whale is shaped. But you can see I'm actually being careful not to just go around the whole thing. I'm just putting it in where I think it needs it a little. I'm not gonna do any more with that. It's almost like sketches here, almost like sketching whales, and I think that is really, really cool. I love the look of the sketch aspect here. You could do this with a pencil as well. We did draw this in pencil earlier, so we could just leave that those pencil marks, and that might give it another cool look, but it wouldn't be as sharp because pencils are so light. But it would give it a softer look. I like the fine liner though. I think it's really cool. Just giving it a little bit of texture here. And I think we're about to call it a painting. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you see this on YouTube, please subscribe and follow for more videos. And I hope you like this. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.